What would happen if you were to take the giant from Jack and the Beanstalk and put him on a college football field? Well, on this episode of Seahawks Scouting, I'm going to show you just what that looks like. Upside. It is perhaps the most used scouting term out there in the NFL, be it scouts, talent evaluators, general managers, or coaches. All of them time and again lean back to that term. Oh, we're looking for upside. We're looking for the guy with the huge ceiling. And they'll tell you this and they'll tell you that, and they'll espouse upon how you build your team with upper level talent, not by going the safe way of things. And then it comes to draft day, and I tell you, they lie to you. They lie to you. Because you get to draft day, and you end up looking at the draft boards of most given teams across the NFL, and you see picks for reach, picks for need, picks to fill in a depth chart. Essentially, what NFL teams have done is they'll go through their offseason and make their trades, make their signings, and then they get to the draft to sort of fill in what they were not able to accomplish in their roster building throughout the offseason. Now, there's nothing wrong in it, but again, they're lying to you a little bit in saying that they really do yearn to get that upside first and foremost. And if you actually, I think, saw teams pick more to best player available time and again, you'd find more successful drafts. And I think the more successful drafts in the NFL that we tend to find are those teams that lean more heavily in the direction of BPA, best player available. This brings me around to 6'9", 400 pounds of Daniel Faalele. Daniel is the quintessential version of upside. And for almost just this reason alone. For Daniel hails way down in that southern hemisphere of the globe, Australia, down under. And while he does have a little bit of a history in rugby and basketball, it was him first cited on a John Harbaugh satellite camp down there that he got the notice of D1A coaches across the country, and they sent him a flurry of offers. He ended up picking Minnesota. He's played for a couple of years there, gotten a little bit better every year that he's been on the football field. But how can you not believe for a guy that's had only a couple of years playing the sport, who has literally learned how to play the sport as he's been at a sub-dominant level on a college field? How do you not look at that guy and start to think about what is the potential for this guy 3, 4, 5 years down the road? So let's go take a look here at Daniel Faalele, this gigantic human being, this man mountain, this right tackle maybe of the future of our Seattle Seahawks. All right, for our first video, you guys know I usually like to do highlights on a player, but with this being a right tackle for Minnesota, it doesn't look like there's a lot of highlight packages out there on YouTube available, so we're going to just kind of do a little quick look-see through a variety of his tape. And let's start. Where do we start, folks? We start at the beginning. That's going to be 2018 here, as we've got Georgia Tech against Minnesota. And, of course, Daniel's going to be on the right side. He should stand out for you folks pretty well in these highlights, being that he is so monstrously big compared to everyone on the football field. But he will be number 78 in these highlights. So let's get this going. Okay, so right out the gate here, we're going to see him in pass protection. A nice close shot here for you folks. You see him with nice feet. Again, understanding this guy's 6'9". 6'9". So when you're watching those feet moving like that so fluidly, you've got to understand that's when we say, man, for a guy at 6'9", he moves more like a guy about 6'5", maybe 6'6". And that's allows you to open up what you might think of him a little bit more, because now you go, he's not just a statue. He's not just a big Frankenstein type there, your typical right tackle that's just going to maul guys, but he actually has a little bit of mobility as too to pair with that. Okay, here on the next play, you're going to get a chance to see him again in pass protection. Nothing fancy here, going against a three-man front, sets up against the left defensive end, shuts him down. In fact, what's interesting here is you watch him even get a yard push up the football field in his ability to neutralize him completely. So 2 good reps out the gate here, but of course some of this is going to come from the fact you're playing against Georgia Tech, which is not going to be the biggest test on the block, but nonetheless a test. All right, we get our first rep here in the running game with Daniel, and nothing fancy like the last one, just him doing his job, which we will see time and over again in this tape. Always keep in consideration with this guy when you're watching him that this is a guy basically playing football for the first time and looking so fluid and at ease in doing so. And on this particular play, he's going to be taking out number 9 here, the linebacker on the running game. Technically, he's going to be on the weak side of the formation here because they've got the tight end. They're sort of flipping your traditional look. But Daniel, more often than not, with the way offenses tend to run, is going to be on the strong side of the play. He needs to clear these type of blockers out, as you tend to need with your right tackles. It's one of the reasons, in my opinion, that NFL teams lean towards more of the right tackles being run blockers, at least historically speaking, first and foremost, over pass protectors. Now, the game is starting to change a little bit in that realm of things, but not completely. The old rule still holds true, and it's nice to see Daniel accomplishing what you'd like him to get done here, as that guy is sort of the almost de facto lead blocker on that play, especially when they're running it out of zone read look like that. Here's another rep in the running game, and what I want to point to on this one in particular is Daniel's ability at positional blocking. Positional blocking is a really underrated trait across the board for offensive linemen, and essentially, as I sort of understand it in my layman terms of this, it's the lineman creating a block to where if you're not able to get the guy up the field, that you're not able to get as much push up the field, that then you make sure and keep your body between the defender and the ball carrier. And we saw last year Creed Humphrey was a master of it. Probably part of the reason why Humphrey is succeeding so well this year in the NFL is that even as he's waiting for probably his grown man strength to set in, even as he's trying to overcome a little bit of his own deficiencies in athleticism, he has that innate ability to get himself on his block, doesn't matter whether it's a defensive tackle or he's down on the second level, and keep his body between the defender and the ball carrier. Well, you see Daniel do that same thing here as well. He adds on top for a little cherry on top. He also is able to get his man driven up the football field as well. So he sort of gives you both components here, which is what impresses me most about this play. He's 6 yards up the football field by the time he starts to positionally twist himself a little bit around to allow for that ball carrier to have a free lane so that the defender cannot just simply disengage from him and make the tackle a little bit further upfield. All right, let's jump forward now. The tape we were watching prior was back in 2018 against Georgia Tech, as Daniel was really basically playing his first football ever. Now we're going to see him here in 2021. While Georgia Tech was not the toughest of obstacles to get around, he's now got Ohio State here in the crosshairs. At the time, they're number 4th ranked team in the nation. They've had a good year this year. As I'm speaking to you right now, they just blew the doors off of Michigan State today. They certainly seem to be in the driver's seat towards winning that conference and maybe going above and beyond. But what it also means is that Daniel's going to get a good couple of tests here throughout this football game. And it begins here on this play with Tyreke Smith. This is a former 4-star recruit coming out of high school. Guy that's maybe never going to be an NFL player, but he's got 3 sacks on the year. He's a difficult enough opponent across from Daniel to give us a pretty good test. And Ohio State in general is going to give us a very good test in this game. What you see on this rep is what you see very often with Daniel, and that the second he locks onto you, you're done. It's over with. Game, set, match. You cannot let him get his hands on you. And most defenders are going to try to make it take as long as they can for him to touch him in the hopes of getting him moving off his feet odd or get him stumbling. But that is not the case here. Tyreke gets right up into his chest. Daniel controls him. And even as the quarterback holds the ball for a little bit of extra time, once that quarterback decides to scramble, he decides to scramble over Daniel's side. And he does so with Daniel pushing the defender back into the main heart of the pocket as the quarterback is just leaving it. Pretty impressive play. Here's where we get to see a little bit of a place where Daniel can struggle at times. And that is a spot I'll go to time and again, being that the longer it takes for him to get his hands on a defender, the more out of sorts he will become. The more better the chances are that he's going to get into that stumbling, head over his feet, not really in good position to lay his block. He initially gets into the linebacker here, but the linebacker sort of does a pull down move to get him to just kind of fall down into the ground. It doesn't impact the play because his block ends up being enough to stop the linebacker, but it's a thing to continue to monitor with him. Here we get to see again something that shows up with Daniel over and over in tape in pass protection. That despite as big as he is, despite as lumbering as he may be, and I don't think he's lumbering per se that he's unathletic, just that he's so big you're going to be naturally lumbering at 6'9", but is just how effortless he looks in pass protection. He absolutely takes care of his man, dominates, Dominates to a level where he basically gets his guy off his feet. Certainly the defender slips a little bit here, and that impacts it as well. But he's doing everything properly in his technique. His feet are under him. He lays down his hands properly inside on the chest pad. He's not off balance. He's well set. He's anchored down. There's no chance he's going to have this guy do anything to him to be any kind of threat on this play. Here's a play that could potentially get you excited for fitting in the Seahawks scheme on this one, being that we love to do a lot of reach blocking now in this Waldron scheme, and that is indeed what this guy's doing here, where he's going down and down blocking onto the defensive tackle instead of traditionally the defensive end who is across from him. Minnesota likes to do a lot of having basically a sixth offensive lineman on the field that would be technically speaking a tight end, but just gives him a little bit of added beef in the running game. This play goes right up over the side of Daniel Faalele, and he gets his block cemented perfectly, gets his man driven back 3-4 yards. That's all you can ask on that play, especially for a tackle trying to take a defensive tackle on a ride. Just again, absolutely effortless in pass protection, and not effortless in that he's not trying hard and that he's just making it look so easy. I nearly need to touch you and you're done. And that's pretty much what happens. He gets his hand on this defensive end, and then that defensive end's accomplishing nothing further. There's not another inch to gain, not another yard to go forward. Indeed, what you see here is look at how far he is outside of the pocket. This is a guy, is that establishing any kind of fear in a quarterback's heart at that point? I mean, how badly do you get blocked when you're this far away from getting your job done as a defender? And I don't think it's because the guy isn't trying it. I just think that this guy is so big and he's so strong, and there are times these defenders just have nothing to give him on a particular rep. Here we go with a little bit of block into the whistle. Daniel just fighting in there first on a combo block, then takes his man, pushes him out. All right, you got a big 6'9" guy across from you. You're a little twitchy. You got a good get off. How are you going to attack him more often than not? Well, you're going to test him on the edge. You're going to make him move his feet. You're going to see if he can meet you at the end of the arc. And that's just what the Ohio State defender does on this particular play. And Daniel meets him again with ease right up on the edge of that arc. Never a threat. Obviously, this is thrown as a bit of a fade route, so it's not a play where Daniel, if he's remembering what the play is in the moment, he doesn't need to understand that I need to lay this block for 5, 6, 7 seconds. I do need to get my hands on him. I need to not allow quick penetration. But that's something that you see again and again. You don't see those weird blown assignment times where he just doesn't get his hands on guys and they go right past because he can't get up out of his stance because he's just so darn big. There's none of that in what I see from him on the tape, which is, again, very impressive and one of the things that you normally look towards when you see guys that are this big. There's not a lot of offensive linemen in the league that are 6'9", and this is a big reason why. Can he lay a thump? Boom. Yeah, I think he can lay a little bit of a thump. I think he's got some heavy hands. That's what they call heavy hands there. Boom. Boom. That's what you like to see. That's something, again, shows up over and over, where I've got hands, I can take you up off the ball with my size and my strength. I am bigger than you. Coach Carroll likes to say, mass moves mass. It means a bigger man's going to move a smaller man, in general terms. Back in the last tape that we watched, we talked about positional blocking with offensive linemen. Well, this is what you see on this particular play where Minnesota scores. Instead of trying to take his man and push him into the back of the end zone, he instead comes off the snap and gets his body positioned such so that he's turned sideways to where the running back has a nice, easy lane to go right up over his side for the score. This score, in my opinion, is almost wholly set up on his block and getting his defender pinned in the fashion that he does. Another pass rushing rep against a defensive end, another rep with that defensive end on their knees. He again just seems to, not even with him being necessarily super tenacious or seemingly to just be that strong, it's just simply they don't have anything they can mount against this man who is so large, and he just ends up leaning on them a little bit, and it's so much weight on him and they're down on their knees. All he simply needs to do is to get his hands on them, and it's a wrap. It's over with. It's done. Very impressive. Well, maybe one of you guys can explain to me exactly what Tyreke Smith is doing on this particular rep. We saw him a second ago just give up on his crossface move. Now he's trying to do sort of a Barry Sanders back and forth thing going up the football field. Daniel's not biting on any of it. He's just standing patiently. Once again, he finally gets up to him and gets to the point where they've got to have contact. Wow, isn't it surprisingly, once again, Tyreke Smith ends up off of his feet. This is what we're going to see with this. And again, remember, this isn't Georgia Tech now from 3 years ago. This is Ohio State this year. This is a 4-star prospect that he's putting on his knees now a couple different times in this football game, and who has not even really, frankly, put any kind of threat as a pass rusher into this game. Here, a defender again tries to see if he can beat Daniel with quickness and speed, especially off the snap, and to see if he can kind of round and bend that corner before Daniel can get there. At first, it looks like he might have Daniel for a moment, but Daniel recovers well, and again, he has that one thing that you can't teach. This is the same thing we saw last year with a guy like Stone Forsythe. I call it the bouncer 86ing the guy out of the club, and that is that when you get to the end of that arc as a pass rusher, right when you're about to turn that corner and make a beeline for the quarterback, the tackle basically uses their go-go gadget arms to send you flying back out the back end of the pocket. That's just what Daniel does here. It's exactly what Stone was able to do at 6'8" last year coming out of the draft out of Florida. You see that same skill here with Daniel. When you got those 36-inch long arms, you put them to use. And this is how you put them to use. If Daniel Faalele is this good right now, only 2-3 years into his college career, into his football career, and you see the polish that's there, the feel for the game, just the natural ability at play, you have to wonder what happens with further refinement, what happens with further time in an NFL weight room, in an NFL weight program. I feel like with this guy, it may not be the sky is the limit with him, but a Pro Bowl potential right tackle, yeah, I could definitely see that. And when you look at our Seattle Seahawks this offseason, they're probably going to need to find a new left tackle. Going to probably need to find a new center. You're going to probably need to find a new right tackle. So that's a lot of offensive line positions that you're going to have to address. And boy, to bring this guy in from day one, I think he would be able to give you some impact. The part of that, though, that comes into play, of course, is that old term that comes back in on this, upside. There's going to be those teams in this league, I think, that are going to look at this kid and just fall in love with him, with his size, with the ability paired with it, with his tenaciousness, and with all of that potential that still seems to be lurking under the surface when you're building into the evaluation process how little football he has actually played. I feel like the kid's going to eventually end up vaulting himself into maybe even a top 20 type state in the first round, being, again, this is not a draft that's necessarily got a lot of top-end talent at it. It's, I think, a pretty deep draft overall. There's a lot of guys, but there's just not those true separators in talent at the top of the board, giving him a chance to maybe vault up some charts in that respect, some depth rankings in that respect. From the Seattle Seahawks standpoint, they are moving to more of a mobile-based offensive lineman. This could be more of a sea change towards guys that are not as big, that are not as much the mauler types, but can move a little bit better in space, can get down to the second level a little bit better in space. This is something that Daniel can do. He has it in his ability. It's not something he's necessarily going to thrive at doing. Still, Coach Carroll has always had a little bit of a love affair for those bigger offensive linemen. He, as I was saying earlier in the video, has a bit of a mantra of mass moves mass. I got a guy that's 350. He's going to have a much easier job of moving a guy that's 300 pounds, say nothing of leverage. So there is a little bit of part of me that wonders if he's going to maybe be gravitated towards a guy like Daniel Faalele just a little bit because of that, as well as he's got that unique background, which Carroll also likes to gravitate towards as well in his players. Either way, this kid's going to be a fantastic prospect, and if your NFL team happens to pick this kid day one, day two, it's a tremendous value. Day one, I'd still be happy with it because as analytics are showing us, you are as good offensively kind of as your offensive line is, or you're the best of your weakest link on the offensive line. And Daniel is going to be no weak link. He is going to be a strength on your offensive line, a guy that's going to give you good play, whether he's being in the run blocker or whether he's pass protecting. He'll keep your quarterback clean. So if he's picked you here today on draft day and you're coming back checking out this video right now, feel pretty happy because your team is doing it right. And I know we've been a little bit late in getting these videos out on the regular on this channel as I've been concentrating on my main channel, The Hawk's Nest, a little bit more often, but we are starting to turn towards the draft season here in another couple of months. So we'll be putting out some more and more videos on these draft prospects. If you like what you're watching, please do hit that like button and subscribe. And if you have any requests on players you'd like to evaluate on the channel, please do put it down there in the comment section. My name is Brandon Keane. This is Seahawks Scouting. I appreciate you watching, whatever you're watching, whoever team you root for. And let's see how this season plays out in the NFL, and let's see how this draft goes coming up.